friends, welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we take the movies we love, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic. Weird Scott Glenn sex magic, you'll have to wait and find out. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, here for a brief introduction before today's stunning ironclad episode. It's official. We're on Patreon. That's right, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. The best way to support the show. The best way to make this show exactly what you want it to be. Every month you get a vote on our Patreon exclusive movies. We have a feature-length commentary. We got miniseries, our new miniseries, Tales from the Crypt. A deep dive into every episode of Tales from the Crypt coming out soon. So guys, we're working really hard over there to make sure it is worth your time and support. So if you would be so kind, again, that's patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. For those of you who already support us, thank you so much. You know we love you. Make sure you go to YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Film Alchemist. You can see our faces over there. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Also, make sure you're leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews wherever you find us. Helps us defeat the algorithmic overlords that won't let our talisman escape this goddamn keep. You know what I mean? Help us! All right, that's enough of that business. Guys, we're here today to talk about a very exciting episode. We are discussing today The Keep. Michael Mann's The Keep. A mysterious film, almost lost to the sands of time, right? We are joined today by two guys that I love and adore. You guys know them. They've both been on the show before. Brian and Blake Salisbury, respectively, of Junk Food Cinema podcast, which I know you all love, and the Replay Preview podcast, which I know you guys would all love as soon as you find it. Brian and Blake, I'm so happy to have them in my life. They are absolutely wonderful guys, just enormous hearts. And if you are kind enough to join their Junk Food Cinema Patreon group, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. They have tons of people who just are drawn to how kind they are, right? Their generosity. They're really funny and interesting guys, but they also have this great way of making all of us feel welcome and excited that we get to be a part of this thing that they've created, right? So I love these guys very dearly. As you'll hear during The Keep, I kind of just fell into it. Just was one of those great pods where it really felt like I was just comfortably sitting and talking to very dear friends of mine, which is exactly what we did. I had never seen The Keep, so this was a really fun movie that they brought. They had all kinds of interesting tidbits about the film. So more than anything, I'm just glad that these guys decided to do the pod with us, that they made the time in their busy schedules. And more than anything, I'm just glad that these guys are my friends, man. My life is better for knowing these two guys, and so will yours. Make sure you go support Junk Food Cinema and the Replay Preview podcast. You can thank me later. Without any more of my babbling, The Keep with Brian and Blake Salisbury. Guys, welcome back to the show. Very excited for this one. Two of our dearest friends have made the time to come and talk about an underappreciated gem. Would you guys care to introduce yourselves and the movie you selected today?
Well, all I can tell you is that this fantasy football league just became a keeper league, ladies and gentlemen, because the Salis boys have arrived with their Michael Mann crush.
Wow.
I am Brian Salisbury, co-host of the Junk Food Cinema podcast, as well as the Replay Preview podcast that I co-host with my brother.
Yep, my name is Blake. No puns, just block A. I guess that's a pun in itself, so
that is a
there
pun.
Ruins that one. We chose The Keep because it's a fantastic film in all regards.
Yeah.
Pre-release, release, post-release.
It's the definition of like a visionary film that doesn't it's a broken film, and I think the ways that it's broken are every bit as fascinating as the ways that it works, and I am excited to talk about both of those things.
Yeah, because I'd never seen this actually, right? It was one of those I had heard about and just never gotten to. So right off the bat, you're just like, there's fucking Nazis and what the fuck is happening? Why are they guarding this fucking thing? It's a bizarre film, right? So when did you guys fall in love with this film and find it?
Well, I saw it shortly after I moved to Austin because I had the very good fortune when I first moved here of living within walking distance of Vulcan Video. So I rented the VHS because one of the things we're going to have to talk about with this movie is that it has never been released on a format beyond Laserdisc. It's never been released on DVD, never been released on Blu-ray. It's usually very hard to find streaming. But I was lucky enough to get to take Blake to a 35mm screening of it at the Alamo Draft House, so I kind of rocked his world with it, and I'm a big fan of Dream Logic movies. I'm a huge fan of Michael Mann. I'm a big fan of any time you add sort of fairy tale elements or supernatural elements with historical elements, especially World War II fantasy or World War II sci-fi, whatever that may be. Like it's something that's one of my cinematic catnips, and I think this movie just hits all of those things. And then you add in a half-naked Scott Glenn, and I mean, you have the recipe for a fantastic movie.
And also an old, but not yet old, but still old Ian McKellen. So it kind of really evens out and just makes it seem like the old Ian McKellen is the Ian McKellen of today, but the young Ian McKellen is somehow the split timeline in Back to the Future.
It was a real nebulous age range for the Ian McKellen of this film.
Yeah,
you're right. Like it is kind of like in Back to the Future 2, where he peels off like when we were kids and we put glue all over our face and then let it dry.
Yeah.
It's like that. He like peels it off, like, look how much younger I am, and I'm like, you're okay. Like Ian McKellen, I refuse to believe that Dick Smith didn't work on this movie for at least a day to do the makeup to make a 35-year-old Ian McKellen look like he was 70, because it's the exact same reason that I always thought that. Oh God, now I'm gonna fucking blank on this. I want to say Jurgen Prochnow, but that's wrong. I'm talking about instead the guy who always worked with Bergman, and who was in The Exorcist as the old priest, and whose name is fucking
Max von Sydow?
Yes. It's the reason I thought Max von Sydow was 80 years old for 80 years.
Yep.
Wait, did you just say that Ian McKellen in this film was actually 35 years old?
That may not be the right number, but he was very young.
He's pretty close. It's pretty close.
And
it's nowhere near as old as he looks at the beginning of the movie.
It's a good segue to talk to you about the production of this film, because it was a fucking mess. Huge mess. And in fact, Ian McKellen has been stated in interviews saying that he would sit in the chair to do makeup to basically make himself look old for like hours on end, and some days they just never called him to do any scenes. They just put him in the makeup chair to do that, and Michael Mann just never called him. So like it was kind of wrought with despair to begin with. This was
a curse. It's a cursed film. It's a cursed production.
It's his second motion picture film, and he only gets $500K more than what he got from in Thief, and he takes it from the Chicago streets to, where did he film this, Brian? In Wales,
trying to make it in Wales, trying to make it look like he's making it look like
Wales.
Romania, but he shot it in Wales.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of wrought with issues at the beginning. And you know, as lore has it, with the special effects supervisor Wally, Veers, he dies, and that guy was basically a part of things like 2001 Space Odyssey,
right?
Superman, Rocky Horror Picture Show. So he was like the visionary,
right?
And this guy just passes away 2 weeks into post production, and everyone's like, "Yeah, we got some notes from this guy, right? Like, we know what the fuck's happening." They're like, "Nope, nothing. No idea what the fuck he was gonna do."
He took his vision for the keep to his grave, which is, I think, any filmmaker would tell you, not ideal. Usually there is at least one meeting where everybody gets on the same fucking page during pre-production. We're talking about they're in post-production. 2 weeks into post, their special effects supervisor dies, and nobody knows what he was going to do. So Michael Mann takes over and goes, okay, here's what I think the final showdown should look like. And he goes to Paramount and goes, this is what I need for it. And they're like, you're not getting any more money. So, and also, we are cutting your movie down considerably, because Michael Mann's first
3.5
hours.
3.5 hours.
3.5 hours.
Oh
and
my God.
He comes in with a 3.5 hour cut and basically doesn't have the special effects done yet. Like, holy shit, that's crazy.
He's like, it worked for Lucas once. It'll be fine. Yeah. No, I guess it does seem odd that it ends on like an intergalactic T-shirt cannon.
Yeah.
But,
yes,
you know, like, I will say this. I did pause the movie at about an hour, and I was like, there's another fucking 50 minutes of this, huh? Like, I thought we were getting, like, once Scott Glenn, like, lays the fucking intergalactic pipe, I was like, all right, we're wrapping this up, right? This is like a final send-off.
You really need to be specific when you're talking about which pipe he is laying in this movie, because
he carries a pipe.
He carries one with him as well. And that's what
like
I'm saying.
a guy who walks into a bar with a specialty pool cue. That's essentially Scott Glenn in this movie.
He looks like the kind of guy who would carry a weapon into a bar and immediately look for Griffey to start a fight. I don't know why that is. It's just something that happens. And by the way, as we're sitting here recording, I just got a notification from Spotify that your Frankenhooker episode dropped. Did you release an episode as we were talking? Are you guys that prolific and I just never knew this?
No.
Oh, no, that came out this morning.
Okay. I'm like, damn, they're like, I must be boring because they're
Spotify
just like
cleared
published.
it from their backlog. They're like,
No,
oh,
Spotify
yeah,
was like,
it's
Frankenhooker?
all clean. It's good. It's fine. We had to review it, but Frankenhooker's fine.
They cut down your 3.5-hour Frankenhooker episode to a brisk 96 minutes.
There was a lot more to talk about with Super Crack, but
yeah, I think this is a really interesting movie, and like clearly something bigger was intended.
Right.
And but I also love that it's pulling from like fairy tales and the Bible and mythology, and it's sort of a remake in spirit only, not in name, of course, but of Der Golem. So it's like it's got like classic Jewish folklore and silent film lineage as well. Like and it just looks so incredible. Like the guy who shot this movie like won Oscars and worked on things like I don't know, fucking Lawrence of Arabia for fuck's sake.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I mean the cool thing about it too is source material wise, it's from a book that came out 2 years before the movie. So I'm sure as they got the book in their hands and they're reading it, they're like, this is going to be fucking epic. So they put it together. It's from a series of books called the Adversary Cycle. I always mess that word up for some reason.
Little Brit for you, eh?
Just a little Brit. It's by F. Paul Wilson. And it also had a limited... F. Paul Wilson.
F.
Paul Wilson.
I will publicly say F. Paul Wilson because apparently this is... Again, when I talk about this being a cursed production, like, imagine another movie where the writer of the source material hates the adaptation so much that he then goes and writes a short story in which a writer puts a voodoo curse on a director who mangled his work. Because that's what F. Paul Wilson did after the release of The Keep.
Yep.
That's so much more petty than, like, what was it, Oliver Stone taking a hatchet to Tarantino?
Yeah.
Or Stephen King taking a hatchet to all of us with that The Shining miniseries.
Yeah.
Right?
Or Gary Paulson taking a hatchet and making all of us read it in 7th grade.
What a throwback.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
all those books. There's 4 fucking books of that series, and I think, and then some.
Really?
Wait
Yes.
a minute. Hatchet has multiple books?
Yes.
We're not talking about The Keep anymore. We're
talking about
the books.
the-
and the
the-
Hatchet
This is
franchise.
turned into a Gary Paulson.
Yeah,
pod,
Gary
actually.
Paulson's Hatchet series, like the kid crashes in the plane right in the first one. I think in the second one he like goes back to try to like relive it or some shit. I don't know.
Why would you do that?
Third one has like, it goes to space or whatever you do in the third one,
course,
and then
yeah.
fourth one, yeah. But no, seriously,
As
it
is
was
tradition, yeah.
Is fourth one the gritty reboot? Is that what it is?
It is, yeah, and it's just called Hatch. It's not
Welcome-
called Hatchet. It's just called Hatch.
That's funny.
He goes back
Welcome
to his
back to-
larval egg state, yeah.
Welcome back to Hatchet Men, the podcast where we only talk about the works of Gary Paulson.
Should we do that pod? Should
No.
we do that pod?
That's 5 episodes. We're done.
Perfect.
Just did
Even
it.
better.
We did the entire
It's
podcast.
it's a limited series pod. It works
Another
perfectly.
notch on our completed podcasts. Yes. It's
That's what we need, right? Like how the Keep has all those silver crosses. We need that, but with mini pod series everywhere.
So, okay. So I'm going to try and describe the plot.
Good
the
luck.
Keep.
We'll
I'm
be
gonna
over here
try.
making jokes while you do
Yeah,
it.
I would love to hear this.
So there's
I
this-
just watched this like an hour and a half ago. I'm not sure I fully processed.
I texted Griffey after I finished it, and I'm like, I think I understand the theme of this movie. I do not know what the narrative was at
it's-
all.
The basic theme of the movie is Nazis are bad, but like you can't unleash a greater evil to get rid of evil. Like it's just like that evil trumping evil doesn't really solve anything.
Right.
But yeah, that's not the
Yeah.
plot. The plot
No,
is
the plot is
that there's a fucking castle in a Romanian town that the
Right.
Nazis happen to be interested in. They think it serves some kind of tactical value. We're not really sure what that is. But
Yeah, it's kind of a cul-de-sac. I don't know how tactically
It takes place right after the Barbarossa, I think, campaign where they're basically invading Russia. So they want the mountains strategically, and they find this keep in the middle of the mountains, and they're like, "Oh, perfect! The keep. This looks great for our Nazisms or whatever they're gonna do."
our
right?
Nazisms. Yes, that's literally.
Their tropes of just hating people and killing people, whatever they do.
That was
They
really
were
their-
very brand oriented as a
It was-
movement.
Yeah.
their
true.
shtick. They were doing a bit.
Them and Hugo Boss. Yeah, they were
They were
very
just
brand oriented.
really
Yes.
committed to it. But yeah, so they invade essentially the Carpathian region of the Romanian Alps. So the keep might actually hold Prince Vigo. We don't know. But it turns out
Crossover universe.
Or Dracula.
it could be any of those things,
Cool.
but it's not. It's Apocalypse from X-Men or possibly Darkseid, depending on what your comic book affiliation is. This is
Well
a better
done.
version of both of those characters than we've seen in movies. So
Yeah.
but they enlist a Jewish historian, sort of a professor of, I guess,
Who they
ancient
pull from a
cultures.
concentration camp, correct?
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
They pull
they're
As
like,
a ruse. As a ruse. I don't know. Was he even a professor? They're like, ha, we got the Nazis. Now you
professor.
can escape. He's like,
Gotcha.
I'm in a wheelchair. I can't go anywhere.
We build a sick
smart
ramp.
plan.
It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put a pin in the plot for just a second, because what I love about old Ian McKellen is that he is still finding himself as a performer. So his version of an old guy is just Rip Torn in a wheelchair. If you listen to the way he talks in this movie, he sounds like Rip Torn, and it's
True.
fucking hilarious.
More,
Like, see if you can dodge this.
more Men in Black, less Balloon Farm, Rip Torn.
Yes, it always.
It should always be less Balloon Farm in every
Yes.
asset of life.
And if you don't know what that is, look it up. I'm not
Although-
joking.
Join the
trailer-
Junk Food Cinema Patreon, and you'll know a
Yeah,
shitload
you'll
about
know.
Balloon Farm.
It is funny that we're going to segue back to the keep off of Balloon Farm, because the trailer that plays right before Balloon Farm is a weird Holocaust drama that starts with one of the characters just looking at the camera and going, "The Jews."
Yes,
It's
and
Oh
you
my
can-
God.
aggressive.
Which is
Jesus.
validated by the trailer being on, like the Balloon Farm being part 1 on YouTube. That trailer, that whole YouTube video is still out there. So you want to go watch the part 1 of Balloon Farm, which basically starts the title sequence and then drops. Then you got to go find it in the interwebs.
Something
Yeah.
as sweet and whimsical as a farm that grows balloons starts with some
Right.
Nazi looking at the camera going, "The Jews." And it's just like, what is going on?
Strangely,
with
not
this?
the keep though. They weren't. It
Not
wasn't
the
a trailer
Keep.
for the keep. Nope.
So
Right.
this priest,
Mel Gibson just so rock hard when he watches Balloon Farm.
Give back my balloons.
I'm really sorry about your big balloons.
Yes, Ian McKellen gets basically a reprieve from the death camps. Him and his daughter get brought to this keep to decode this ancient language that's on the wall. Because and the reason they're doing this is because as soon as the Nazis get into this keep, they start being murdered by something.
Right.
And the
For being greedy and
now,
evil, but
they're
greedy
being-
more.
Is that their worst sin? Is that the worst sin?
It's really just greedy because they're fine with him being in there, but as soon as they start trying to take the crosses, the silver
Yeah.
crosses, they're like, they're
Yeah.
made of nickel. Not this
mean,
one. Okay,
to
how
be
much is
fair? I think
Again, I don't know enough about metal or how important that was during World War II, but they were like
You would
really,
consider maybe
really
food would
hard
be-
about the fact that they were nickel.
food
I
and
kind of
shelter?
see you as like the Mel Gibson of metallurgy, though, right? That's kind of what you strive for.
Is that what it is?
You have to remember there was an expression at the time that and a nickel cross will get you a cup of coffee. So that's really what they were trying to do, is just get several cups of coffee.
Just get lots of coffee. Just jack up this entire village on
So-
caffeine.
One of my favorite things about this movie is the idea of like the lesser of two evils, and that just
Right.
is like a common thing that keeps coming up, like to the point that Jürgen Prochnow, who is in this movie because of the success of The Boat. I've been told that when I say Das Boot, it's like an anthema. It's The Boat, whatever. Das Boot was such a success that they cast Jürgen Prochnow in this, and he's sort of the less mean Nazi leader.
The reluctant Nazi. That's
The
what.
reluctant Nazi leader, and we think he's the evil one until Gabriel
Yeah.
Byrne shows up with his Richard Spencer haircut, and and we learn that there can be degrees of evil within
Yeah.
the ranks of the Nazis, which is I think
Yeah.
one of
I
the-
always
That's
forget that Gabriel Byrne was once this young in movies. I've assumed he was like in his 50s for like I don't know, 30 years.
he also had the Dick Smith makeup treatment where you just think he's old forever. Like,
That too.
No, it was nice of them, though, to put a Nazi to be Das Boot of our empathy.
Yeah.
Otherwise it would just be hard to watch.
right? So
Yoink.
and so this priest, who's played by Robert Prosky, who's a fucking amazing actor and was of course in Thief, Michael Mann's first film. He brings Ian McKellen and the daughter in it because he knows they don't actually know what it says, but it's just a ploy because they're friends to like help him escape. And then it turns out that there is something released in the keep, this monster called Molestar, who immediately makes Ian McKellen young again and able to walk, and it like restores him entirely, and sort of strikes up this Faustian bargain of like, he tells Molestar about all the evils being done in the Holocaust, and Molestar's pissed. He's like, I'll destroy everyone who kills my people like that, but I have to be able to get out of here, so you have to take this artifact out of the keep so that I can leave the keep, because they realized that this thing wasn't built to keep anybody out, it was built to keep something in. And so the whole movie is basically it's Ian McKellen wrestling with his conscience at the idea of like, if I take this guy out of here, I can save all of my people from these death camps, but who knows what'll happen to the world once this thing is out. And then Scott Glenn, who is just, I guess, on a sex vacation of Eastern Europe, deciding, oh shit, I guess I better go do my job. He's like a secret angel or something.
Like the weirdest, like, by the way, like when he wakes up in Greece, you're like, all right, there's Scott Glenn's in this movie now.
And he's on the slowest motorcycle that you've ever seen in the shots.
You're like, you're trying to see if he's like slowly gonna fall off.
But he wakes up to like snow, right? Like there's snow above him.
Yeah, there's some sort of
magical transference of power.
Some sort of something in the air.
Okay,
you should be slinging dick closer to home.
It went to the nearest Scott Glenn in the area, because otherwise it would have, it would have transcended and gone to the next.
Yeah, it first went to the astronaut, who at this point would have been a child, and then it was like, oh shit. So anytime there's a huge missing swath in the narrative, I'm gonna start just going rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat, because what basically Paramount did was line miles of 35mm film up against a wall and machine gun it, and that's how they edited this movie. So basically, anytime that there's something that doesn't make sense, just imagine Paramount lining that film up against the wall that had all the scenes that would have explained this and just mowing it down with bullets, because that's essentially what they did. I mean,
it's also like, I don't know about you guys, I noticed also like audio cuts that were awkward, like that Tangerine Dream score's happening, and then it's just like, cut. Oh, cool, we're moving on. Never mind. Sorry.
What? Okay.
My bad. I was enjoying that. That's my fault. I should have been paying attention.
That's how they build the ticking clock in, because Scott Glenn doesn't seem to be in any rush to stop this from happening.
No, man,
he's taking his sweet ass time to get
looking
there.
out a window, hanging.
Scott Glenn shows up in the fucking village, and he's like, I am 2 city blocks away from this evil that might come out and destroy the world. I better stop to have some Sting-style sex with this young lass. They could be sitting there holding hands in that weird crucifix position while fucking Molestar just walks out the fucking door.
He completely forgets the sun in its jealous sky as he walks in her fields of gold.
Is that a Led Zeppelin song that I'm not aware of?
No, it's a Tantric Sting song.
Oh, okay, got it. All right.
That's why that joke took forever.
Enough. Yeah,
that's why that joke took forever.
How many times do you think Scott Glenn did that, though? Like, I just want to know what it's like to fuck as a mortal man. Is that like his go-to?
He used that line in every country. That's why I'm saying he was on a sex vacation.
Yeah.
That's literally how he just blazed through Slovakia.
You know what, though? I always imagined this is how Genie is the moment Aladdin ends. You know what I mean? Do you ever stop and think about? I'm like, for sure,
I have
the first
not,
thing
but I
he's
will
doing.
now do that every day of the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Just
Genie
he puts on his
sure,
Hawaiian shirt so he can go hit up like a fucking swinger
and
convention.
then he looks down and he's like, oh my god, I have a penis too. And that's like, that's the second Aladdin movie is.
Then this is the 3.5 hour cut of Aladdin that just never made it. Really, what you're trying to tell me.
Disney lining all that footage up against the wall.
They did. It was because Will Smith wasn't around yet. They couldn't bring him from the keep.
I can't wait for Aladdin 4, Genie's Rumspringer. Like,
tell me you wouldn't watch that, though.
Of course I would watch that. I watched Balloon Farm. But I watched Balloon Farm, so really
I bet
I'm not
that's what
really...
Genie calls his dong.
I'm not the...
So let's you made a point about the soundtrack and some of the audio cuts. The soundtrack in general is created and birthed by Tangerine Dream, which at this time they were already an established artist. This was their 23rd soundtrack and their 58th overall of their music career. So they were completely on board. Of the 16 songs of the original soundtrack, only 4 were used in the film. The best part about this film is everything is mysterious around it, even the soundtrack releases, right? So,
Right.
very hard to find. It was only officially released in 1997 at first at a concert with 150 CDs, right? That was the only thing that you could get.
Wow.
Hell yeah.
Later on, there was a discussion about the 1984 LP release that was supposedly supposed to happen, and there was conversation about people going to the store, seeing it on the shelf, not having enough money, then going running back and then seeing it gone and all that shit. Well, it didn't show up until 2013 by a collector, and then there was a repressing at the same time of a what was to believe to be an already known leak, but was actually the original 1984 pressing. There's a bunch of random shit happening with the soundtrack releases, but until 2020, we never got an official release on vinyl of the original soundtrack. So this film has mystery all up in its shit. And Tangerine Dream is not left out, but it is an incredible soundtrack. And the last collaboration as of right now between Michael Mann and Tangerine Dream, because they had a great relationship in Thief, and that's where I'm just like, this movie just went awry. Didn't have a big budget, didn't really have the chemistry that the Thief had, and it was just very bizarre that
and
we
had
went
no
from,
studio confidence. I mean, what we're talking about essentially is most of the elements of this film getting buried in the keep and never to be seen again. Like, we'll never see the missing 2 hours of this movie. You know, we almost didn't get the soundtrack was apparently released with a few copies and nobody told anybody, so nobody even knew it existed. And it's like, now you can buy like Italian and German bootlegs that people thought were just ripped from, you know, various shitty elements, but turned out to be ripped from the original LP release that nobody knew existed.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And by the time, here's the thing, this movie failed so spectacularly that the U.S. held on to, like, the U.S. release, it was buried in home video release, and they waited so long to release it, but that by the time it came out, Michael Mann had already been successful with what he retreated to, which was Miami Vice. He retreated to television and created Miami Vice because of the failure of this movie, and they waited so long to release it that by the time The Keep comes out, in its extremely limited release, he's already successful with Miami Vice. Like, if it weren't for the failure of The Keep, there would be no Miami Vice, and I think that's fascinating.
This is also the time when going to like TV was like, that was the failure. Like,
Tail
that
between
was like
your legs.
you totally fucked up, so now you have to do TV. Like, now it's like interchangeable, it doesn't fucking matter. But like from like the 80s until like, I don't know, The Sopranos or Oz, like literally until like HBO became HBO, going to TV was like, oh, you fucked up.
No matter what the series, like, would Columbo even be considered like an honor to direct an episode? Like, were there even?
I don't
any
even
shows
know.
echelons?
I don't even
Like,
think there were like. I don't think
That was
so.
just
I mean,
work.
like, it was work. Like,
That's
that was
crazy.
like, you fucked up in movies, you got to go do TV.
So what was the HBO slogan when The Sopranos first premiered, when Oz first premiered? What was their...
Wasn't it's not TV,
It's
HBO?
not TV, it's
not.
HBO.
ah.
Literally setting the expectation that, I know you think TV is shitty, but don't worry, we're better.
You
This is
haven't
better.
seen The Keep yet. No, I'm just playing. Which will release on our platform later.
I know you think TV is shitty, but have you watched The Keep?
No, that's not to
that-
say this movie is a mess. And even Michael Mann, who was thought to be repressed in this movie, I'm not good. He doesn't really mind it. He just says that there's no way we're going to be able to ever put it together. But I love the elements of the mystery.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting movie because what you have to do is decide to sympathize with a Nazi at one point. That's a really hard bargain to
gives
pull
it
for
up.
American
Yeah.
viewers. It's a very strange thing because, like, Jurgen Prochnow, you're like, I think that guy's a good guy. What's going on? Like, he is a Nazi. That's a terrible thing to be. And I'm like,
It's unfortunate that he's sort of the mouthpiece for the idea of, like, looking at the world with a moral relativism, where it's like, you know, it's basically, so imagine this movie is the high concept fantasy version of that stupid question that every stoned friend you've ever had ask you, like, would you go back in time and kill baby Hitler?
there it is. I knew you were going to say it.
That's what this is. This movie is essentially asking you, like, would you release a world-eating demon that would probably destroy everything in its path if it meant you could stop the Holocaust?
Yeah.
That's the central moral meat that you're chewing on with this movie. And unfortunately, Jurgen Prochnow is like... he's the sizzle of that steak, and that's really unfortunate. But
it's weird.
Yeah.
Again, it's very gristly, to use the same analogy.
Yeah.
It's
dude,
also,
I would totally let that thing go. And you don't go back and kill baby Hitler. You go back and kill Hitler's dad, first off. I may have been stoned and debated this before. Because then you stop him from making more Hitlers down the road. You know what I mean?
Isn't there like a
I guess
butterfly?
I have to know what you mean. Yes.
Isn't there like a butterfly effect rule that like you could be bringing on like a new era of what was the bad?
I've never seen a butterfly commit genocide. That's all I'm going to say.
No,
Science.
Blake's right. If a butterfly flies back in time and kills baby Hitler, then that means that Ashton Kutcher will have a film career. I don't know.
That's what I was going to say.
I thought you were going to say Ashton Kutcher becomes Hitler. And I was
You
like,
might be-
Jesus Christ.
That
A
would've been a
butterfly
weird
might
twist.
not have caused a Holocaust, but Ashton Kutcher definitely ended up in jail and definitely almost blew that guy, but ended up going to
Did
an
he
alternate
blow a guy in
reality.
jail?
Almost. It was close.
Are you talking about a movie thing? I was like, did I miss a really
We
cool
watched
thing?
this movie for the show.
Oh, shit, dude. Oh, Butterfly Effect, the movie. Oh, my God.
You should not watch this film. It is. Not
I was
great.
just like, if I was in jail, I wouldn't want to blow Ashton Kutcher because he only takes a bath once a week, he says. That's an unblowable person.
Speaking of an unblowable person, Brian,
Why?
what was the monster in the Keep's name again?
Molestar.
Molestar. Okay.
Molester.
Molestar.
That's where I was like, I'm not going to try to pronounce it because that's what's going to come out. So I'm going to hold on that. But the way that they introduced the character is very Mysterio. Like he's got clouds around him. He's
Yeah.
saved this woman from rape. Like, and he's bringing it back to the father. And he comes out, and what it comes out is like you kind of mentioned, it's like this weird. I would think Nemesis, like this just weird looking dude, and you know, to the lore, apparently Michael Mann changed his mind a few times about how this was supposed to look, and he kind of like never really decided. So what we have is like a hodgepodge camel of a horse.
Oh, I thought that was on. See, I read that too, and then I was like, is this on purpose? Because like, there's the smoke monster essentially the first time you see him, and then he's like this weird sinewy, like you can like expose muscle type, like Lord Zed thing.
He's like Ivan Ooze in his prime.
Yeah, and then the last one is like the man in the iron mask, like encased in carbonite type thing, like which. You know, but again, I was like, is this like an evolution thing? Like he's preparing to go out into the world? Because I had read that, yeah, they had done like a bunch of different looks and could never settle on it. But then I was thinking, I'm like, did they just make it work, or is this?
It seems like they
that
just
what it
made it
was?
work because the character, you know, I
for
think
me.
is really cool. I have the
Yeah.
T-shirt of it, but
Do you really? That's awesome.
yeah, I should actually have just worn that. That's weird. You would think I would color coordinate there, but whatever.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah, it does come together in a very sci-fi. It all works together, in my opinion, the way that the Molestar looks.
Yeah.
However, it could have been way more epic, and there's more talk about the actual ending of the film and what was supposed to happen versus what we got, and that's simply just because the studio was like, no, you're not getting more budget to then do a crazy special effects thing. Oh, by the way, the guy has already died, so what are you going to do about that? Like,
Yeah,
Right.
Every time you look at Molestar and you're like, Michael Mann changing his mind, and just imagine he looks over at Wally Beavers, and Beavers is like, oh, don't worry, I'll fix it at the end. I got a great idea.
don't worry, I'll be around.
I got this.
Yeah, you can count on me.
That was his job security, was not writing it down.
You do just hope Michael Mann just literally never asked him, and then he totally took it to the grave. Like Michael Mann was so busy doing other things, he's like, oh shit, I have no idea how this movie was supposed to look at the end.
There was a part of me that I thought specifically the kind of like fog cloud. I was like, oh, this is smart, man. It's going to cover up like the fucking, misfires in the thing. And then by the end of the movie, I'm like, oh, that wasn't an accident. Like he actually is supposed to be this fucking rubber suited whatever. But honestly, I still didn't think it looked that bad.
It doesn't. It fits
for
well
all the
within-
problems this movie has. Every time I watch it, I say the same thing to myself, which is that this movie fucking owns. Like
Yeah.
it's so cool. Like visually, it's impressive. I do need to backtrack a little bit. It wasn't the cinematographer that worked on Lawrence of Arabia. It was the production designer. But this movie, like every set in it, is a fucking work of art. You could pause the movie
yeah.
at any point and frame that image. Like it is just that beautiful. But the cinematographer did shoot fucking Excalibur.
Yeah.
So it's like
Hell yeah.
Alex Thompson, not
And
not a slouch
Demolition
in his
Man.
own right, and Legend, which is another film I feel
That
is
is my
unfairly maligned.
favorite visual movie of all time. I fucking
And-
still to this
and
day
Labyrinth.
love watching Legend.
Yeah,
This is a good DP.
Yeah, he's a great DP. And
I
then
thought it
it's
looked good, to be honest with you. Like,
it's beautiful.
Inside the Keep is a staggering set.
Pretty
It kind of
sweet.
reminded me of when you're watching Mortal Kombat and you're like, why did the set designer go so much harder than everyone else involved in Mortal Kombat? Like, the sets in that movie are bananas awesome.
There's
what I
moments
mean?
in this movie that look like when Ian McKellen's like doing that thing in the light with his fist. Like, I was like, oh, this is like legit acting. Like, this is like within the scope of this movie. Ian McKellen is not only putting on a show, but we're also getting this like beautiful like shot, like this actor bathed in light. There's this awesome vibe, and you're like, I'm in this now.
The
Like,
scene
I'm
where
in
he
it.
runs out with the talisman and the crosses were lighting up as he ran,
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit.
Awesome.
I agree. This movie's visually awesome.
And
It's
then
very
one
dreamlike.
quarter of that Tangerine Dream soundtrack is playing as he's running through the
Yes.
keep, and it's just
One of the
so-
four.
Oh, so good.
What a shame.
Yeah.
Like, so what is it? 16 songs were recorded for this?
It's
Is it
16 song album,
four
and
of
only
them are in the
four
movie.
used. Yeah, very strange. It's also
And
just-
so I watched the Griffey. We both watched the Pluto TV has the cut. It was like
No
what was
way.
it,
No way.
2 hours long.
I watched the Criterion Channel cut.
Shut
Oh,
up.
it was an hour
Anyways,
and
so we
30
both
minutes.
watched
Like
this
a
Pluto.
fucking grown man,
Right,
first
yeah.
off.
See,
How
that's-
dare you?
See, that's the problem. Like, we don't. Like,
I have the kind of integrity you usually
don't
only
start.
find on
Just
replay
stop
per
it.
view.
Stop it
First
now.
off, how
We
dare
what
both
you.
know you
aspect
watched
ratio
this.
did you watch it in, Alex? God.
Yeah.
Well, I watched it in. Hang on, I can tell you what it was.
Suck my
Actually, I
aspect
can't.
ratio.
Whatever Michael Mann's preferred aspect ratio is like 1.
Did you watch it on
235.
Poopy or did you watch it on Criterion Channel? Because Tubi is Poopy.
Obviously, Criterion,
I will say
according
that
to Griffey.
this was the first movie that he shot in 235.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Which
Yeah.
is he would do from this point on in his career. He just thought the movie should be big and you can't sweep people away and 185 and mono. So this is actually a revelation for him. Like it taught him something about making movies. But just like from the very start, you're shooting this movie in Wales. Surprise! There's a lot of rain. So like principal photography getting delayed. He's not getting the money he needs. Like they're not going to let him like make the movie he wants. I mean, he's so I'm surprised we get a Michael Mann movie after this. Like
Well, he's failing upwards. And
Yeah.
do you think that at the end of the day he's still figuring it out? Like, even though Thief is like amazing and I don't think has any flaws really, do you think that his second film he's still trying to work this out where he's like, oh shit, this might be too big of a fucking take on my next film, and then he has to figure it out, and then he goes to Manhunter, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So-
I did Manhunter next.
Yeah, so that's where I'm like, it's interesting how you get a bang of a first film, and then your second film is just like you have like a stew of things, and what you have, I think, is great, but it just
Right.
seems like there was a punch above his weight, and it's just strange from a Michael Mann perspective, because later on in his career with Black Hat, his ass, but you know what I mean, like most of the time,
But
he's
it is,
so
but it
solid.
is like totally outside. Like it is like it's like Thief, Manhunter.
This movie could have been called Manhunt.
It's like
this is
this
the same
one
thing.
and Last of the Mohicans are like so far outside what he normally does. You're like, interesting. Like,
Yeah.
why these items? Why are these two in your filmography? Part of like, and I think Brian's right. Like, there's something to learn from The Keep, and that is like the aspect ratio, but also like how to shoot those really big, beautiful things. And like he made things look so awesome in that movie.
Well,
like
and
that
I
is an
feel-
undisputed thing about it.
I feel like what's very singular in the career of Michael Mann when you talk about The Keep is that Michael Mann is a director who is obsessed with minutia, obsessed with details. When you watch movies like Heat and you watch how he used technical advisors to get all of the language and all of the like specific steps in the heist correct,
The
and like really
details. Oh my
he's
God.
all about the details. So when you watch a movie like The Keep, where so much is kind of left up to the audience's imagination and left unexplained and left kind of open-ended, that was not his intention, because that's
Yeah.
not the kind of filmmaker
No,
he is.
yeah, totally.
Strangely, though, it works really well, right? There is something to this
It does
kind
work
of
for this.
ethereal.
I think so.
It strikes us as, right, because he even says that, right? The Nazis, like, we are the new, we'll write the next 10,000 years. There's just something about people stumbling into kind of antiquity and having no fucking idea, but being like, we got this. All right, we have cars. We'll fucking understand whatever the fuck is happening, right? So you get this kind of, they feel like they own everything, right? and the mystery, you get this extra sense like we don't even know. So it adds to this kind of like gloom and doom of the movie. What I think is really interesting to what you guys were saying, though, I think you don't fault a filmmaker for going really big and missing some things, right? Because what he didn't do like what was that fucking movie where Channing Tatum was like a fucking Mars dog or whatever? Like that's one of those.
Oh
it's
my
like,
God, Jupiter Ascending.
Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah, where it's like you had the time and whatever, you just fucking missed. Like you clearly didn't understand what a story should be.
Right.
I feel like in this one, most people who watch it, right, are like he knew what he was doing, and he was on his way to make a great movie. Just real world
Shit got in the way.
fucking hindered him. So I don't think you knock people for taking the big swing and it doesn't go exactly right. Because clearly the studio was building something to keep in, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
There's enough mystery involved and lore involved in this movie to capture a new audience. And that's why I do think that the Criterion Collection or whatever the fuck distribution, even Vinegar Syndrome, whoever, release this damn fucking movie, right? Release it in a format that deserves the respect it needs, because I guarantee you there will be a new audience that finds appreciation for this film. It has a cult following. Yeah.
As much as Michael Mann has not completely disowned the film, he is one of the two big roadblocks to it getting that release. Every time they try to do it, it's always Michael Mann being like, I don't want my name on it, I don't want it to be associated. And then Tangerine Dream, like trying to get the rights for the music, ends up being such a nightmare that none of these houses will go near it. But I do think we are well past the time that, and I gotta say this, that Criterion Channel stream is the best looking stream I have ever seen it. Like, I am used to watching this movie through muddy sunglass filters, like on YouTube or Tubi.
It was
like,
similar to the 35 millimeter that we saw.
The 35 millimeter print was flawless because, again, this movie got like secretly released in a couple theaters and then dumped to the still burgeoning home video market. So like it really did get buried. So that 35 millimeter print was pristine. And then this stream, I was like, man, I can see detail that I've never seen before. And I still thought the movie was beautiful, even watching it like through on muddy YouTube. It still was beautiful. So I mean, I really, really highly encourage anyone who hasn't seen it to watch that Criterion Channel stream. And it makes me even more hopeful that someday we'll get a quality Blu-ray of this movie because we fucking deserve it, man.
It's weird Paramount hasn't put this one back out. Like, it's very strange to me. Like, again, there's just not enough shit on the shelf from them, and like, there's no reason for them not to.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
they don't want to overwhelm us on Paramount Plus with things you might actually want to watch.
Star Trek shows and The Keep.
I mean, this is the quintessential Janus Films project from Criterion. I mean, in 2009, Michael Mann stated that he loved The Keep for what it was of the production value and the way that they shot it, because it's a beautiful film. And I think that alone is worth saving. But he's like, but yeah, we'll never figure that film out because it needs to stay. And it basically trailed off. But the idea is he's like, it's just done. We don't need to go back to that. But I do think you need to release it. You need to just say it's fucking done. It's right there. It's on the shelf. It now goes to this. It's not a bad Michael Mann film. You can go and appreciate this film just after watching Thief and then going to Manhunter and being like, yeah, it was an audacious punch, but this is not a shit movie. It's not, I saw 1-star reviews on Letterboxd. I'm like, man, I don't know if we watched the same movie. It's incoherent, yes, but it's not. It's like a dream. Everything is mysterious. It's like I don't even remember watching this because it's a dream. It's just like every time that you watch it, it drags you into this mystery. And everything that doesn't quite answer your questions about the plot is almost like intentional. I know that it's not, but it just seems like, okay, whatever. Like, it goes with it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
It doesn't detract my enjoyment of the film. I think that's a really special thing about The Keep, is that me not fully understanding it does not mean I don't enjoy the movie. And I don't know, I can count on one hand probably the amount of movies that I'm willing to watch that have that mystique to them.
Yeah, and it's engaging the entire time. It is visually arresting. Like, it's a fucking symphony of like Moog, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's such a, like, there isn't a movie like this. Like, there are movies that are kind of in the same ballpark, but like, there's nothing like this that exists. And I've always been of the mind that, like, even if a movie turns out to be a mess, there can sometimes be a lot of beauty in that mess. And in this case, I think, we know the movie that Michael Mann was trying to make. And I know a lot of people are like, well, what's on the screen? And that's fine. But I also think if we're going to consider cinema to be as much a part of our culture as it is, as a dominant part of our culture, then the stories surrounding the production become their own folklore. And since this movie is, in part so much about folklore, I think the fact that it has such a fascinating, tragic at points, insane at points story behind this cursed production, I think all of that kind of culminates into a very singular experience that I'm just thrilled that I've had multiple times. Like I can't think of any maybe a couple other movies that I can say that about.
Yeah, well, I think you're just being a bit pretentious with yourself. If you see a movie that's doing so much this well and has this cast, you might be acting like the C word, giving it 1 star. Any movie with this cast is not a 1-star movie.
Agreed.
Every actor in this movie is fucking awesome. Even Scott Glenn, whatever the fuck he is with his fucking lenses and that one scene where he has his traps out, but the next scene he's got a shirt back on.
Yep.
Like, whatever that is, he's still putting on a good performance, right?
40 minutes of the cut was just him having sex with a bunch of European women. That's really what we missed.
Honestly, though, needed that. Needed
Yeah.
more of that. We need the real world stakes, right? It's a big challenge.
To
for
be
him
honest, I know that that's the joke, but truthfully, the backstory, that is the one thing that I think clearly got cut out of the movie. I'm like, I actually could have learned a little more about Scott Glenn. I'm like, oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
Continue.
Immediately
line-
goes in my Hall of Fame of when you're watching a movie and you're just like, people don't fuck like that.
This
People
is
do
fake.
not fuck like that
Fake.
ever. Ever, right?
People don't crucify themselves while they're entering each other.
I've done the research. It's just not a thing that occurs.
I think our theory that he is on a European sex tour is validated by Ian McKellen's line where he says, "He is like a hammer; he can smash them." I think we know
damn
what
right.
he's talking about.
What if in the recut they add Scotty doesn't know and we just kind of bring it all together?
Yep.
You know?
It's all part of it.
Does Film Alchemist have a t-shirt store? Because you could make a Scott Glenn European sex tour t-shirt.
And his
from,
eyes are glowing white.
Yeah.
Let me pull
Scott
up the
Glenn,
old
call us.
designer
We can
section.
we can sell tens of shirts together.
Believe you me, that would be a very popular shirt. Michael Mann would be
hell yeah.
primed to get that one.
We should fucking do that.
We should do it.
We got to get our shirt nerds on it.
Yeah.
I will say this movie has affected the way I see Scott Glenn in other movies because, like, if you watch Silence of the Lambs and like 90% of that movie is shot in close-up, there's
Yeah.
all these close-up scenes of him as the FBI guy whose name is escaping me now, Jack Crawford. Every time they're in really tight close-up on him, I just want his eyes to start glowing white, even as Jack Crawford.
Yep.
I still have no idea why he left, but it's just awesome. I still, to this day, I like movies that don't just feed me all the answers, especially in today's movies, right? When you go to the theater, you know there's going to be 3 scenes. I call it like the Ellen Page from Inception role, right? Where we literally have to stop the movie so a character can go, "What's that?" And someone else can do like a fucking monologue about what we should know.
Yeah.
And you just fucking tune out. Right?
Well,
There's
you know who
something
the king
about
of that is.
actively
Movie on the
trying to-
rails. Just take me on the rails. Oh, intro. Oh, there's the fucking. Here's the third
king of
act
that.
and the conclusion. Thank you. I've had my popcorn. I'm fat now. Bye. Go.
The
see
king
you
of
tomorrow.
that forever. The king of that forever is Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. He explains so much to the audience by saying the same words, which is, "Are you telling me?" And then he tells you exactly what's happening. Like he is the greatest audience mouthpiece of all time.
Yeah, that's a really good. It's weird that never like jumped out at me, right? Because you're
He
like,
spends the
for
entire
all of
movie
its science
explaining it.
fiction, it's about the most straightforward time travel movie of all time.
Yeah, it really is.
Also leading to one of the greatest stoner debates: do you think your mom would want to bang you if you were in high school together?
Would you go back in time and stop Eric Stoltz from being in Back to the... Wait, we already did that? Okay.
Someone already did that mission for.
Already happened.
Are you telling me... Never mind.
Yeah. So Back to the Future was an amazing film, and y'all should watch it.
Wait, what?
This is good. Oh wait. Oh shit. No, this is the key.
And in fact, did not star Eric Stoltz.
This is true. Neither does The Keep, so right
does
back to the track.
There should be more movies that don't star Eric Stoltz, if we're being like 100% honest with our fans here. No, he's a fine actor. But he's more of like the Nazi who pulls the thing. I'm not saying Eric Stoltz is a Nazi. I'm getting.
You literally just stated it.
You literally just said that.
I meant he should be playing the character of like Greedy Otto. That's like kind of where I like my Eric Stoltz, right?
Yeah. Griffey just declared a Stoltzkrieg on here.
Second shirt idea of the episode. We're gonna be fucking rich.
Yeah.
What if this whole podcast was just listing movies that Eric Stoltz isn't in? This is our 1000th episode.
I think
movies where like this could use a real Stoltz, like Eric Stoltz.
This could use a real injection of Stoltz, if I'm being honest.
Was Eric Stoltz in Mask?
Today we're going to talk about Fluke, a movie that does not star Eric Stoltz.
No,
we're running out, guys. We're running out of movies.
It doesn't star John Hamm or Chevy Chase either.
Oh, no.
That's Fletch, not Fluke.
Weird Fletch there. My bad.
Weird Fletch, bro.
Weird Fletch, bro.
Any final thoughts on what if someone is still on the fence or there's some fucking Eric Stoltz level C word out there who still hates the Keep? What's your final sales pitch?
Fuck you, I don't want to be friends with you.
Nice.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Love that.
No,
Withholding human affection. That's a
That
great
is
tag.
I implore you to think about your imagination and stop being in your own ass and think about when you're watching a movie, think about what goes into that and know that you've never seen a shitty movie if you're saying that this is a 1-star movie. Because holy shit.
Something happened to Brian. Are you okay?
I just stopped the podcast. The bit about listing movies that Eric Stoltz wasn't in was a bit. So I picked the most random film title I could think of. I've never seen Fluke. I pull up the old IMDb. Who is fourth billed in the cast for Fluke? Eric fucking Stoltz.
That's
the worst
a fluke.
Well done. That's a true fluke. Wow.
That son of a bitch. He's always hiding in there.
I had thousands of movies to choose from that didn't star Eric Stoltz, and I somehow picked one that he's in. Wow.
So what do you think of this Eric Stoltz movie, Brian?
Well, Eric Stoltz in The Keep is phenomenal as Molestar.
As Molestar, yeah. Eric Stoltz rocks it.
I can't wait to see him in Endgame 2 or whatever. Endgames again or something. I don't know. Ender's Game.
I think your life will be enriched by the experience of seeing The Keep. I really do. Like, I really think it'll teach you something about expanding your mind and accepting the idea of film as an art form and how art is not always linear and how art is not always easy and it's not always easy to swallow. And like, I think this is a movie that, you know, you can ponder at what it wanted to be and what it could have been. You can lament all of the things that went wrong, and then you can still be blown away by how what was salvaged out of that train wreck is still so gorgeous and so unique. And just I don't know, like I would watch this movie every fucking day.
Yeah. Well, it is. Cinema is unique in that there is no other form of art between artist and audience where more things can go wrong. That, like, no other art form deals with that on the scale that movies do. And so, again, to even say, right, I had this cursed production and, you know, the studio was shotgunning, you know, various bits of the movie. It's still fucking awesome. I had never seen it today, and I was gearing up for you know, all right, how are we going to defend this decrepit old film? I thought it was awesome. So Brian this year has brought me 2 movies that'll be on my favorite first-time watches of the year, this and Drive. I think this movie fucking rules, man. You know, I don't really see what anyone's complaint is with it, to be honest.
Yeah. I cannot imagine I can't imagine sitting down for a movie called The Keep with no knowledge and having a complaint about it because it delivers literally what you've asked for.
Scott Glenn and such.
You have no idea what you're going to do.
Scott Glenn.
Shirtless Scott Glenn, maybe Eric Stoltz, Molestar, Nazis get murdered.
Eric Stoltz, Mola starring Scott Glenn. It's a wild movie.
And
guys.
baby Hitler being murdered by butterflies.
There it is.
If I can wrap...
you castrate Hitler's dad. Stoners, back me
Sorry.
up.
So if I could put a bow on this conversation and go full Gene Shalit for a second, I feel like what we're saying is that, ironically, we do not need to defend The Keep.
We're not going to do better than that. Thank you guys for joining us and making the time. Will you tell the guys, the peeps, one more time where they can find all your stuff?
You can find me reincarnated as a dog named Fluke, frantically searching for a movie that doesn't star Eric Stoltz to pull out of my ass. What the fuck happened with that? That's insane to me. And I just I pulled my phone out thinking, what if I'm wrong? No. He's not in. Oh, God damn it. So more musings like that and more mistakes of that epic nature can be found on Junk Food Cinema every week with myself and C. Robert Cargill. Basically, movies that are sometimes bad for you, but we love them anyway, and we are unburdened by core values, and shame is not a thing that exists in this dojo. So I hope you enjoy that, and I will leave it to Blake to plug our other podcast, Replay Per View.
That's right. If you like wrestling and you like going back through a specific timeline of wrestling, well, we have the show for you because we review every old pay-per-view as we lead up to what it is of today. So we are in 2002 right now. We started in 2000, so we've made quite a lot of progress. And as they say, my name is Blockay, at Boston Sally on the on the interwebs. And if you would like to join the Discord, you can do so for $1 an episode as well. So
yes,
you get
patreon.com/junkfoodcinema.
Become part of Film Alchemist, become part of Junk Food Cinema, and put those two things together because it is a wonderful time to have great friends to talk about movies.
I feel like it's going to be a surprise to...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
I feel like it's going to be a surprise to no one that we appreciate the train wreck that is the Keep when we're also willingly watching WWF pay-per-views of the early 2000s. We understand the irony.
That's true. Yeah, I am over on the Patreon Discord. You guys truly have built one of the finest communities that I have seen through the podcast. A lot of awesome people over there. Guys, you got to join that Patreon. You can even hear me and Alex over there on the Junk Food Cinema. I don't remember what movies we did because as soon as these are done, I forget everything.
I know we did The World Is Not Enough. That's what I remember.
Oh, my God, that's right. R.I.P., Hagrid. R.I.P.
I might see if I've got some incriminating photos of you two to see if you'll do a Amityville movie with me as a commentary. Yes. And I'm not talking about.
I started
about the good ones
this October.
No, you haven't, Griffey. No,
you
haven't.
I'm 6 in.
No, I'm talking about.
Have you seen Amityville in Space, motherfucker?
There we go.
I love In Space sequel. Brian,
no, you don't.
You call me, I'll be there. What are we talking? And we got to do our Hatchet miniseries. Also on the Junk Food Cinema and Film Alchemist Patreon. The first 3 will be on Junk Food. The last 2 will be on Film Alchemist. You got to do both. Yeah, I'll do any. I will watch any movie.
I'm talking about movies like Amityville Zombie Infestation, Amityville in Space, Amityville Karen, which is a real movie. Apparently, just a quick thing and then a backstory on this. I'm doing a thing for our patrons called the Amityville Gauntlet, where I'm watching all these movies because apparently you can't copyright a real tragedy. So some dude found a loophole where he could call anything he wants Amityville whatever, and then just use photographs of the actual house maybe once or twice and convince people it's part of the same universe, and has just made some of the absolute dirtiest, terriblest bargain basement shit you've ever seen in your literally whole scenes where you can see reflections in the robot's helmet of people sitting cross-legged on the floor filming the movie with their iPhone.
Awesome.
That sounds great. Well, let's see, because by the time we were in part 3, they're like, scary houses are fine, but what if it's a lamp? Right? And then part 4, they're like, all right, I get it. Lamps weren't the jam. You ever seen a fucking clock? So, the Amityville went off the rails, early in the franchise.
Yeah. And normally with commentaries, I don't like punching down, but with these movies, I am hitting the devil in the dick. That's how far down we are punching with these awful fucking movies. But
that should be another name of a podcast we'll start. Exclusively on the Junk Food Cinema Patreon network. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Go check out Junk Food Cinema and Replay Per View. We'll be back tomorrow because every year we do this to ourselves. 31 days, 31 pods. See you there. Bye.